This graph shows you a 30-year picture. It goes back to 1984, and you can see, moving through time to 2011, what has happened to incomes, with the top 1% at the top, and those of us at the other end of the scale, low, middle, and then the top 10%. You can see that the lowest incomes in New Zealand have pretty much stagnated. They've stayed steady, while at the top, it's a vastly different looking picture. This picture has been allowed to emerge across both Labour and national governments. And as a result, we now face this picture. You'll be aware that 7 to 10 babies die every year at the hands of a caregiver. And there's a high level of public concern about this. And we have 60 babies who die before the age of 1 from poverty-related illnesses. They're preventable illness. So clearly, if people can be outraged about that rate of child abuse, and we should be, we must also be outraged about the impact on our babies of living in poverty and deprivation. About 25% of our children live in poverty, and you will know, because you'll be seeing it in your communities, what that means for those children. Cold, damp housing that makes them ill, food that's not sufficiently nutritious to enable their full health, food that in fact is so poor in its nutritional value, for some children it's leading to a stunting in their brain development and significantly impairing their ability to learn. High levels of illness because of cold, damp housing and poor nutrition, which means that they're not participating fully in early childhood education or in their schooling. And we can fix this. We must fix this. We've got compelling economic and social reasons to do so. We have, of course, significant disparities for Māori and Pasifika children. And for those children who are living in deprivation, because of the stress of that situation, they are more likely to experience neglect and abuse. Every year, New Zealand spends $2 billion picking up the cost of child maltreatment, and we spend $6 to $8 billion picking up the cost of child poverty. So we're talking about roughly $10 billion a year on having to pick up the pieces for our children because we do not invest in them adequately. Most importantly, our investment in our very young is low compared with older children, and we spend 5 times as much on people who are in their last 2 years of life as we spend on children in their first 5 years of life.
This is not a Pacific issue. This is a New Zealand issue. And it's too easy for people to walk away from it. Hey, I go home and I live it. The people in that data are the people I go to church with. They're the people who shop at the Shop and Save in Otara with me. Right? And that's why there's a part of me that gets really angry when they say, oh, we're going to give you some funding and we're going to parachute another group in. And I just say, oh, here we go again. I worked at the University of Auckland. They were introducing a program. They gave close to $500,000 for this program. Their program from Israel targeting Pacific students in South Auckland. We came up with the Pacific leaders in our community with our own program to target the same students. This group got nearly $500,000. We got $22,500. You know what? It says a whole lot about the way we think, eh? That we would sooner go over to places that are sending bombs to parts of their own nation and fund those ideas and not fund the ideas that are community generated. We've got to do better. Anne Salmon, she did an assessment over 10 years of bursary results, and she showed in her data, analysing the students coming into Auckland University, that it essentially looked like that. Fewer bursaries were coming out of low decile schools, and most of the bursaries, which was at that time university entrance, were coming from high decile schools. She wrote in her summary, and it's one of the best things I've ever read by dear Anne Salmon, who was my boss for a while. She said, why don't we stop making kids sit bursary and just ask them when they get to university to apply, how much do your parents earn? And then we'll say you can go on based on that. Because that is essentially what that diagram is telling us. You see, we've got enough data. There is enough evidence to show us that we are in a crisis. And can I say, be honest with you, I don't care whether you voted National, Labour, ACT, whatever. What I care about is the deep sense of compassion that I think this nation is quickly starting to lose.
We have a problem. We have a big problem. Global capital, edu businesses, aided and abetted by pathetic governments that have embraced the market, the unfettered market, neoliberalism, are coming after our kids. And we can't allow it to happen. It's not a problem that any one of us individually can confront. We can't do it alone in New Zealand. We can't do it alone in Australia. We can't do it alone in any country of this world. Our only chance is to build a global response. A global response where the sum of our individual parts as member organisations of our global union federation ensures that the whole is stronger than the sum of those individual parts. We've got to build alliances. We've got to build strength. We've got to build capacity in order to take this on at the local, the national and the global level. At the local and national level, we've got to look inwards to start off with. Is our house in order? Are we strong? Are we strong in terms of the alliances that we're building? Are we building those alliances with other unions, with other community players, with other parts of civil society? The strength of these global businesses, these corporations, these edu businesses, is bigger. Their influence goes deeper than what we could have ever imagined a number of years ago. We've got to build the alliances to get stronger, to defend that which is so important to us, and that is quality public education. They're coming after us. They're coming after us, but we cannot allow them to succeed.
The name of this conference is Time to Tackle Inequality. Doesn't it fall to NZDI to lead that? Are we as teachers, support staff, principals, ministry employees not at the forefront of the outfall of the deepening inequality in New Zealand? And so are we not best placed to work with New Zealanders in the opposition to what's happening to our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand? But do we not also need to take on and lead the fight against the broader attack on working people and their families? Our leadership in education is recognised, but in my view we must broaden that leadership to the fight against poverty and inequality and the attacks on the rights of working people in this country. Our size, our resources, our status, our unique place as an education union, our professional standing, our industrial strength, our reach and our depth, don't they all mean that it's our time to lead? The basic and fundamental right to fairly participate in the social, political and economic life of New Zealand is being denied to increasing numbers of Kiwis, and we as NZDI Te Reo cannot stand aside and let that happen around us. We will take on this responsibility to lead. We recognise that it's our time to lead, and we will lead. The sort of leadership we need is not from the top table, that's part of it, but it's the leadership of NZDI in our communities, in our schools, amongst our whānau. It's the sort of leadership of talking at the school gates to parents picking up children, of ECE teachers talking to parents picking up fractious kids at the end of the day. All that stuff, that's what we need to do. Taking part in the Living Wage campaign in every other way our marvellous members can demonstrate. And at all times demonstrating through our actions and leadership that our fundamental values as New Zealanders are not lost, that in New Zealand these values are our values and they matter and they are worth fighting for.